morning. It's the final one for the week. Thank God it's Friday. Let's do Friday business here on Business Morning. I'm Ini John Mekwa. We start off with oil prices. Prices were a little changed on Friday, but set for second weekly drop as disappointing economic data from the United States, which is the world's biggest crude user, and uncertainty on further interest rate hikes raised concerns about future fuel demand. Brent crude futures for June trading at $78.53, and that's up 16 cents, about 0.2%, as while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was up 23 cents at $74.99 a barrel. Brent is set to decline this week by 3.8% and is down 9.1% in the past 2 weeks. WTI is on a path to drop 3.8% this week, taking its 2-week decline to 9.4%. Investors are also worried about potential interest rate hikes by inflation-fighting central banks that could slow economic growth and dent energy demand in the U.S., Britain, and the European Union. The market is quiet because of a mixture of bullish and bearish economic data, and as a recovery, the global equity market gave a relief to investors, referring to oil's slight rebound on Thursday. In the commodity space, Chicago wheat futures slid on Friday and were set for their biggest monthly drop since last November, as forecasts of rains in U.S. plains and expectations of ample world supply weighed on the market. Corn hit its lowest in 9 months, while soybeans ticked lower. The most active wheat contract on the Chicago Board of Trade was down 0.5% at $6.26. Corn dropped 0.5% to be $5.78 for 3/4 of a bushel, and soybeans slid 1/4 of a cent to $14.03 for half a bushel. Wheat also lost 9.6% in April, the market's biggest monthly drop since November. Corn hit its lowest since July at $5.78 a bushel, and soybeans down 6.7% this month. That's the biggest monthly decline since June. Forecasts of rains in the drought-hit U.S. plains are boosting expectations of plentiful supplies and adding pressure on Chicago wheat prices. The corn market is facing pressure after the United States Department of Agriculture said that private exporters canceled sales of 233,000 tons of U.S. old crop to China, underscoring concerns that a large Brazilian crop was diverting demand from the United States. Net sales of U.S. corn for the shipment in the current and upcoming marketing years fell to a 15-week low of 400,000 tons in the week ended. We come to Nigeria now. This is the hottest topic in the country at this time, to go or not to go. That perhaps best describes the removal of petrol subsidy in the country. That's in Nigeria. This follows the announcement by the National Economic Council to hold action on the planned removal at its valedictory meeting, which was chaired by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. While briefing State House correspondents afterwards, the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, stated that the NEC concluded in its meeting that it's not favorable time for the removal until after the transition. According to her, the meeting deliberated on the matter and resolved that it cannot be removed for now, but it equally agreed on the need to continue discussion on the matter and continue the necessary preparatory work in conjunction with states and representatives of the incoming administration.
What I said is that it is not going to be removed now, which means it will not be removed before the transition is completed. That's what it means. But then we have 2 laws that have inadvertently made the provision that we should exit by June. So if the committee's work, which will include the representatives of the incoming administration, determine that the removal can be done by June, then the work plan will be designed to exit as of June. But if the determination is that the period needs to be extended, it will mean that we will have, as a country, will have to revisit the Appropriation Act, for example, because the 2023 budget only made provision up to June. So if we're extending beyond June, it means we have to revisit the Appropriation Act and do a supplementary or amend the bill, and also the PIA. We that are here now are going to do the work with the representatives of the incoming administration, and we will exit and leave them to continue with the implementation of the plan. And so there will be an expanded committee so that it is not just a few people's thoughts that will guide the process, that there is sufficient consultation, taking inputs from key stakeholders into the measures that need to be taken.
Well, a whole lot of questions, of course, following that announcement since yesterday, some of which we would well, get our guests to try to answer on Business Morning, like the issue of the budget allocation, as the minister mentioned there, because we do know that the budget allocation for 2023 had subsidy for up to half of the year. So what's going to happen afterwards? There's also the issue of debt situation, which a lot of people, World Bank, IMF, UN have warned that Nigeria may not be able to sustain, the payment of subsidy any longer when we look at our debt situation at this time, and it keeps growing. So how is that going to fit into this continuous subsidy regime in Nigeria? Then there's also that $800 million which the federal government had gotten from the World Bank, which is supposed to create a buffer for removal of subsidy. What has been done to that money, with that money? What's going to happen to it? I do know that these conversations are going to be holding for a very long time. But, I mean, we'll settle on that here on Business Morning in a couple of minutes, the second half of the program. But for now, let's go to the aviation sector. I mean, we've been talking a lot about repatriated aviation funds, and we know that recently the federal government or the central bank had come out to give some relief in that aspect, but there have been some adverse effects. For instance, it seems like foreign tickets are now more expensive for Nigerians to pay. But I mean, let's get an expert in that field to tell us the real situation going there. Are we out of the woods now that we have seen a payment of those funds that were trapped before now? We have joining us from Brazil, Mr. Bernard Bankole, the Group Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Finch Glow Holdings. Thank you so much, Mr. Bankole, for your time this morning. All right, Mr. Bankole, it seems like you might have to unmute, but I believe you can hear me. So tell us, what's the situation now? We did hear that some relief has come, the airlines are going to get their funds, but what is the true picture? I cannot hear you, Mr. Bankole, and I believe our viewers cannot hear you too. So I don't know what is going wrong there. If you check your mute button and all of that.
Clearly now.
Yes, I can hear you now. I hear you now. So I believe you heard the question.
Yes, I heard the question.
All right.
And the truth is that all along, the federal government have not been able to allow the foreign airlines to repatriate their funds due to scarcity of foreign exchange. And we have said this over the years that, look, let there be other windows where the foreign airlines could repatriate their funds, and it will bring succor to the people of the country, considering the fact that we do not have a national carrier. Because if we have a national carrier, the picture would have become a lot clearer. But as it is now, the central bank has made it possible for the foreign airlines to utilize the I&E window for them to repatriate their funds. So the issue of trap funds is beginning to leave the system. But the only challenge now is that the exchange rate has gone up, which means that the cost of tickets will go up. For me, I believe that every form of subsidy has now been removed completely from the aviation sector, which, if you really look at it, let the forces of demand and supply dictate the price of everything. And that is what has just happened here. As at today, the rate of exchange for issuance of tickets is about 610, which is very close to the black market. And when you look at that rate and the black market, it means that it has almost disappeared. The airlines won't have issues of trap funds anymore. Then the forces of demand and supply will dictate what the price of their tickets will be, and some might increase the volume to be able to have more of the market. So that's just a situation where we found ourselves, which I think is better off than when we did not have inventories from the airline, because when they found out their funds were trapped, they closed all inventories and we couldn't have access to their inventories. We not having access to their inventory means that we're unable to issue their tickets, and their tickets are actually being issued by other travel agencies outside the country that had access to their cheaper inventories. So that's just the way it is.
So I guess that the price that Nigerians will have to pay is a higher flight ticket compared to neighboring countries. Isn't that going to send passengers? I mean, there was a time it was quite popular. Nigerians wanted to travel abroad. They go to Cotonou or Ghana, you know, to get the tickets.
Well, in business, I mean, you can always tell that the passenger, they have a choice. Mind you, aside the fact that going to neighboring countries, we have some other carriers, African carriers, that the prices are relatively okay, that people could fly. It's just that the journey becomes a lot longer. Maybe you'll have to go to Kenya before you can go to London, or you have to go to Addis Ababa before you can go to London. The journey becomes, so it's a matter of choice. Yes, business will always put itself to be like that, but there's really nothing there's really nothing an intending passenger can do right now. The intending passenger will have to make do with what is available, and what is available right now are the prices that the airlines have to provide. Mind you, the cost of tickets has not gone up. It is the rate of exchange that has pushed up the price. It would be good for us to understand that.
All right, so from your perspective, this puts to rest the issue of trapped funds and all of that. So we should expect that has been taken care of.
Yes, it means the issue of trapped funds have come to rest, and the forces of demand and supply will now have to play a major role in the cost of tickets. You can see an airline wanting to have more of the market by putting up some promotions, increasing the frequency, increasing the volume, and all that. So we will see the real forces of the market, which is demand and supply, that will be the order of the day. I mean, when people say things like you go to Ghana, the price of tickets in Ghana, the question you should ask yourself is, what is the flying populace in Ghana? How many people fly in Ghana compared to Nigeria? We're talking about a population of over 200 million people, and Ghana that is less than 30 million. I don't think that we should compare both markets at all, you know. And when you really look at it, the convenience of moving from one destination to another, you weigh all those options, and you want to stay within your country and make your trip.
Hmm. So earlier you did mention the issue of a national carrier. Where are we with that, say Nigeria? I think some days ago there was a kind of hurdle to the movement in that area, but what's going on there?
You know, the issue of national carrier has been politicalized, in the sense that every nation, especially a country like Nigeria with huge population, needs a national carrier. Your national carrier is your first ambassador to the rest of the world. But the question is, can we go about it in a way that it brings respect, dignity to everyone? So if we disagree on the process that has been adopted by the Minister of Aviation, I think is something that we can look into. That is why we're there to support the government in guiding them through their policies. I so much believe that we deserve a national carrier. With a national carrier, it will guide even in the prices of tickets. And that's the truth. But the way we've gone about national carrier, some feel that it will be a waste of money. We've seen Nigeria Airways fail. Are we sure that this will not fail? But the question is this: we can't continue to dwell on the past. We want to move forward as a nation. We have seen how countries have been transformed by the aviation sector. Emirates Airline today has been able to change the outlook of Dubai just because they have a national carrier that has been able to grow tourism in that sector. We have Ethiopian Airline doing the same thing. So we having a national carrier shouldn't be the issue that we should all support the fact that we need a national carrier. But the modality is what we need to look into. If we've seen certain things that are wrong about the process of the national carrier, then we might as well say, can we put a stop? Can we pause here? Can we add this? Can we change the investors? The government shouldn't get itself really into the trading. However, the government should be able to create an enabling environment that will allow business to thrive. So by providing us with a national carrier and the government having very little stake in it, will make a lot of impact in the aviation sector. And that's what I stand for today. We need a national carrier, but the modalities must be clear.
So what for you, Mr. Bankole, would be the right modality? I know that I think for a lot of stakeholders in the aviation industry, the introduction of Ethiopian Airline seems like it's not acceptable. So what for you would be the right modality in this respect?
For every airline, you need a technical partner. And in this case, that's the singular reason why the government has approached Ethiopian Airlines to be their technical partner in carrying out this particular task of bringing the dream to reality. Now, looking at the Ethiopian Airline deal, if there are some clauses that does not favor us, those are the things that we need to look into and get it properly sorted out, rather than condemn the fact that we do not need a national carrier at this particular point in time. I think we need a national carrier that will boost even our tourism sector as quick as possible. A lot of people want to come to Nigeria, irrespective of the bad impression that is being created left, right, and center. A lot of people want to come to Nigeria. And the only way to promote Nigeria as a destination is to have a national carrier.
All right, so I mean that is still because we saw that there's, of course, the court is now involved and all of that, but it seems a long way from being over. And as the minister said a couple of days or weeks ago, he's not happy that things are not settled even as this administration comes to a close, because we also have that issue of strike with the unions. They occupy the airport and, you know, stopped flight. That was a warning strike for 2 days. And I mean, it just seems like things are not really settled in the aviation sector at a time when Nigeria should be attracting foreign investors and investments.
Well, it's just quite unfortunate. It's unfortunate for the aviation industry, because the truth is only the aviators will build the aviation industry. You don't expect other people from other industries to come and contribute and see to the growth of your industry. I believe that the minister from time to time had provided an avenue for engagement through the stakeholders meeting we've had over the years. I believe that if we all come together, there's absolutely nothing wrong in having another stakeholders meeting to see how these issues can be addressed. When I look at the issue that led to the strike, you find out that those issues are issues that shouldn't have surfaced at this particular point in time. We're talking about demolition of their offices. I mean, it wasn't, there's no how the demolition would have happened without an alternative accommodation being provided for the union. And that's it. The other issue that the union raised was issue of salary review, which is already in process and is with the head of service. I think that the strike was not necessary at that particular point in time, which affected not only the industry, as it affected the passengers as well. We need to start working together to see how we can grow the aviation industry. It has a lot of potential. We will not continue to be a loggerhead and expect the best to come out of the industry. How do we move it forward is what should be important to each and every one of us that find ourselves in the industry.
So do you see this, I mean, May 29, I mean, from next week, we're already in May, so it's just countdown to the days when this administration comes. Do you see this administration at least putting some kind of things in place or dealing with some of these challenges to a large extent before the end of it?
Well, the truth is, we're moving from one government into another government, but the ruling party is still in power. I believe that there should be some sort of continuity in some of those policies that will bring about growth to various industries. So even if it does not happen, I believe that the new administration can take it up and see all the goods that comes with it and make it come to fruition. Because either you like it or not, we need a national carrier. Now, if the process is going to be having a flag carrier before we arrive at the position of national carrier, so be it. But I'm really keen about us moving forward rather than us just talking about it and frustrating the entire process. I'm in for growth. And that is what everyone in the industry should focus on.
Obviously.
So it is still possible.
Obviously, Mr. Bankole, everybody wants growth, but how do we get the growth? Seems to be the conversation that we should be having. But thank you so much for taking some time from your busy schedule right there in Brazil to join us. Mr. Bernard Bankole is the Group Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Finch Glow Holdings. Thank you. And your day is just starting off, so have a great day.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
And that subsidy policy and the implication is what we're having now with Mr. Olakunle Ariyo-Yonda, the managing partner, Design Thinkers Academy. He's also the chief executive officer of Brute Consulting. Mr. Yonda, you went through a whole lot of trouble to get here. We really appreciate it. I mean, here in Channels Television, we've been talking about the traffic situation because of the construction and some other obstacles on the road. And unfortunately, you say you spent about 3 hours or so from Lekki to
3 hours plus from Lekki to this place.
And you did not even have to come with your car, else
no,
you'd still be stuck right there.
I had to leave the driver in the traffic and decide to get someone who is on the bike, who took me to a point. Then the bike broke down took another bike.
Wow, what an experience you've had this morning.
It's very interesting.
We really appreciate your efforts and your time. I mean, and that's part of the reason why Channel Television, we keep talking about, you know, the situation on the road, the infrastructure, you know, because it affects, I mean, do you know how much value 3 hours is? You know, as an entrepreneur, you have 3 hours, the value of that and what you can do with it. And we're not even talking about the petrol, you know, that you're using, the health hazard. It's, I mean, it's really not funny, but
may God help us.
May God help us. But thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
You know, and going through all of that. So, yesterday, I don't think a lot of people expected the fact that the issue of subsidy removal will be put on hold because everybody had planned, oh, okay, so from June, we're going to be paying more for petrol. What impacts will it have to my pay, take home? What will it have? What changes will I have to make? You know, and then suddenly we hear this. Well, we have some people like the CEO of CPPE, Dr. Muda Yusuf, saying, well, they should leave it to the next administration to decide, you know, what they want to do with it. What's your own perspective?
Well, my own perspective when I heard that yesterday was to say, well, maybe it's the right thing to do. However, the question I asked myself initially was, okay, you're going to have subsidy removal from June, but you're having a new administration coming in by June, and you have been there for 8 years. So how come you didn't remove it before now? Are you setting a trap for the next administration? Will it be part of that administration agenda, national agenda? If you look at it, subsidy has been a major problem for us in this country. It was introduced by President Babangida in 1992, okay? So, and now you have a situation whereby you want to go and borrow $800 million, okay, as a palliative measure. So, and the question I asked myself, 800 million naira, who will benefit from it? We say, okay, conditional cash transfer of 5,000. But if you look at the administration has spent over 2 trillion naira on conditional transfer, cash transfer. And even with that, about 133 million people were pushed into multidimensional poverty. So which means that the so-called palliative is not actually going to help anybody because we are using that money to fund consumption rather than production. And okay, another administration is coming in. If the administration comes in, the administration must be able to hone it, to say, this is the direction at which we are going. But you see, what I saw, my conclusion yesterday was to say, I think in this country, we lack leaders who have the courage to do the right thing. Because the Custom General, I mean, the NNPC Managing Director said that subsidy is a fraud. President Buhari himself said it. The former CBN governor said it. Adam Oshom, everybody believed that it's a fraud. So if you believe that there is humongous amount of fraud in subsidy, why did you leave it now? And why is it difficult for us to do it? Why don't we have the courage, at least for once, let's have the courage to say, this is the direction at which we are moving, and we have to go in that direction. However, you said that where people are expecting it, that it's going to be removed, I would say that maybe the likes of you are expecting it. The market women don't even know what subsidy is. They don't even understand it. So, and for you to do this, there are basic things that must be done, which I believe that the government has not done. Massive sensitization of people is part of it. Because Nigeria has to be able to hone it, to say, okay, you know what, we are going to be paying extra for petrol that we are using. That is not a problem. However, this is what we are getting in returns. What are they getting in returns? Are we getting good health? Are we getting good education? Are we getting good roads? What are we getting in returns? Nigeria don't understand that, okay? And I see that to be a major problem. And for the next administration, I think they must have the courage to do the right thing and must be seen that they are doing the right thing.
Yeah, because, I mean, it was part of the campaign.
Exactly.
Even for the APC, that subsidy will go. So it is how to implement it. Even though we do remember that the APC promised us that there was going to be restructuring of the country, and we didn't see it, and President Buhari has done his 8 years and is leaving. We didn't see it. So I don't know if it will be the same thing with the subsidy. We will get the promise and we won't see it.
I said courage to do the right thing. Yes. I hope it's not just going to be a mere campaign slogan, which the president-elect said, whether you protest, whether you do not protest, we are going to remove the subsidy. But let's go back to the history of subsidy. You discover that every attempt made by past administration to remove it has always resulted in failure. I remember during President Jonathan, he tried to do the same thing, to move from maybe 65 naira to 142 naira. Eventually, there was a protest, so we dropped it to 97 naira. But you see, the problem we need to ask ourselves as a country is, how serious are we? You are spending about 400 billion monthly now on fuel subsidy. Between January and June or May, or June, it's expected I will have spent 3.6 trillion. It's absurd. And the way I look at it actually is, I have a maid in my house, and my maid is stealing and is stealing and is stealing. Every now and then he's stealing. I say, this maid is a thief. He's stealing. He's stealing. And I didn't do anything about it. Okay. You know, the conclusion would be either he's stealing and I'm benefiting from it. Or maybe he's stealing, I couldn't confront it because I am using her to cover something for me. That's where I look at it. How come nobody has been able to say, we are going to confront this? They mentioned that there is fraud. How many people have been jailed? If the president of this country said that subsidy is a fraud, the NNPC used 97% of its revenue to service all subsidy. Is that even sustainable? It's just common sense. And how come that all of us tends to behave as if we don't even have that common sense? You said something is a fraud, and yet nothing is done about it since 1992 to now? I think something is wrong, you know, somewhere. So I hope that the president-elect is going to have the courage to do the right thing.
So let's look at some implications. I mean, even the Minister of Finance mentioned this, some of it, when she made the announcement yesterday. The issue of budgetary allocation. We know that subsidy has been allocated for up until the middle of the year. So it doesn't look like it will go at the middle of the year. That means we're talking of supplementary budgets. Now, we're looking at the debt situation already. The budget deficit and funding of the budget is a headache. So, of course, that increases our debt situation. And then we were told that the federal government has already gotten the $800 million from the World Bank. And they were supposed to give it to, you know, about 50 million households to help them buffer the effects. So what's going to happen to this? These are some of the immediate questions, you know, that arise from this.
All right, we read it, we heard about it. The $800 million is to be borrowed or has been borrowed. Hopefully it's not been spent, okay? Because when you take such a decision at the 11th hour of your administration, it puts you in a bad light, whether we like it or not. No matter how well intentioned, people begin to look at, oh, why are they doing this? Because we have seen that there seems to be a convention that when some administration is about to leave, that's when they go about borrowing. And we talked about giving people 5,000 or how much. Maybe we talk about 50 million Nigerians. So if you have about 133 million Nigerians in multidimensional poverty, and you are only going to help 50 million Nigerians with about 5,000, you know, naira, what are we really talking about? And when you look at this subsidy thinking that we discussed, our consumption is 35 million barrels per day, 34 million liters per day, okay? The subsidy covers 59 million. So we have about 24 million that can be classified as fraud. All we need to do, let's even say we want the subsidy to continue. Okay, we're going to say it's 35 million that we consume per day. It's not going to exceed that 35 million. So we want to investigate what happened to the 24 million. Who are the culprits? And somebody is able to take an action to say, you know what, we have jailed X, Y, Z, we have closed down this business, we have closed down that business. The man in the street, that's what we have to understand. That man on the street will not mind to pay the actual cost of petrol because he knows that, yes, I'm paying, I'm getting something in benefit, and those who are fraudsters, who are causing trouble and headache for us in this country, they are in jail. But why is very difficult? Over the years, for almost 25 years, or more than that, thereabout, why is it difficult to remove subsidy? Because you discover that those who need to sanction it are beneficiary in one way or the other. Maybe they help them to fund the campaign. maybe something else, and all of that. So I do not think that the solution is 800 million. This government need to be transparent. This government need to come out and say, we have borrowed 800 million. Okay, this is where the money is. Or we have not borrowed that 800 million, we are just in the process. But Nigerians need to know, okay? And if that is not fully disclosed, because now, yesterday they say, okay, we are not going to remove subsidy again, which is fantastic. But tell us, what have you done with $800 million? Have you borrowed it? If you have borrowed it, what's going to happen to it? That's what I think this administration needs to do.
All right. I can tell that this is a very long conversation that we would have to stay on for a while. Mr. Lukunle Ario Iyanda, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for going through the trouble.
That's all right. It's the price we have to pay sometimes.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Yes.
All right. So now let's head to the market and see how that is. From yesterday, we do know that, well, the equities might be recovering. I don't know what's happening with the other market, but we have Will Ibong to be our eyes and ears from that market. Will,
good morning,
I hope you were not caught up in the traffic this morning. Even if you did, I mean, it's your job. You have to be here.
Whether I like it or
you
not.
have to be here. So
the traffic was there. It's quite mad, trying to navigate your way to work. I imagine.
And then you have the articulated vehicles.
Yes.
There's so much on the road these days.
It is quite phenomenal. You're wondering what is happening. Is there no timeline for them anymore? Is there no, it's just like they just, work, they're out in the morning, afternoon, and evening, So, and it's causing a lot of pain for the average Nigerian on the road, especially with the rehabilitation.
Yes.
Time is, is lost on the road, and
hours.
Economic productive hours
exactly.
on the road. So we're just going to kick off with the fixed income market. When it traded yesterday, regardless of the traffic in Lagos. Now, the bond market traded with bullish sentiment. Yields are dropping in that space as average yield contracted by 3 basis points to 14%. Now, across the benchmark curve, we saw a contraction. Average yield fell at the short end, but it was flat at the mid and long segments of that space. Now, also in the Treasury bills secondary market, yields, transactions, activities were bullish. I mentioned earlier, yields are beginning to drop. We're seeing a contraction of 169 basis points to 7.3%. Now, across the curve in the NTB market, we also saw average yield closing flat at the short end, but contracted as fell at the mid and long segments. Now, we're going to be talking to Ifeoma Onyejekwe, she's fixed income dealer, UBA, to give us what's happening there, why we're seeing this downtrend, especially what happened at the NTB auction, at the Treasury bill auction on Wednesday. Good morning, Ifeoma. It's good to have you on the program.
Good morning, Will. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, before we kick off, I just want us to kick off with the highlights of the Treasury bills auction that happened on Wednesday. Could you just give us a bit of a background, what happened?
All right, so before I even go there, I'm going to talk about why the system liquidity was very liquid. So we had part allocation payment paid recently, as well as principal payments and coupon for maturing 27 April 2023 bond. So that greatly increased market liquidity and was reflected in subscription levels at the NTB auction, which is where you were going. We saw total subscription standing at 819.1 billion compared to 280.35 billion at the previous auction. And then what followed was a slump in stop rates as we saw the one-year bill fall to 10.17% from 14.7% at the previous auction. So we've also seen that the secondary market was very quiet as a result of yield expectations. So, people were expecting yield to fall, but not as much as that level. And we have also seen that market players have been very preferential towards short-term placement than locking long-term securities based on expectation towards, like you were previously discussing, towards expectation of removal of false subsidies and also increasing inflation. But unfortunately, these funds will likely be reduced as the CBN today has already carried out discretionary TRR debits across financial institutions this morning.
So how is system liquidity right now? How's that affecting this downtrend we're seeing? How much money do we have in the system?
Well, we still have a lot. As at yesterday, it stood at over 1 trillion because, like I said, the maturities from the bond as well as coupons on maturity bond really increased system liquidity. So we saw subscription levels and rates just dropping. But today, it's going to be reduced by the end of the day, as we're not exactly sure how much the CBN has taken out of the system via the CRR debit. But by Monday, we should be sure of the figures.
Okay, so what do you expect for next week? What's your outlook?
For next week, we expect quietness and cautiousness. We know that a new administration is going to come in very soon. So we're not seeing, a lot of activities, especially on the long term. So a lot of trader market players, they're just doing, short-term placement, money market placement here and there. And people are very cautious to, lock in security. So we'll see majorly cautious trading in the market by next week.
So a lot of cautious trading for investors in the fixed income market. We'll be talking about that for equities market as well. Thank you so much, Ifeoma Onyejekwe, fixed income dealer UBA, for joining us and sharing your insights. For the equities market, we did see positive sentiment still persisting in the market, sustained by investors' eye on the big names in the market. 0.27% up yesterday, still at the 52,000 level. It's up there, a bit more numbers adding to that, and we'll see that probably possibly today going higher, and equity cap still at the 28 trillion naira mark. And this was driven by investors' interest. I did mention the big names. We had Boa Foods yesterday. Now, we saw month-to-date loss yesterday, moderating now to 3.7%. Year-to-date is now up 1.9%. Now, looking at the activity yesterday, we saw it at 2.33 billion units. That's a decline of 64%. Value was at 17.62 billion naira. That's down from what we saw on Wednesday. This is basically like a drop, but still very strong numbers for the activity, and deals up much more than Wednesday, 6,958. Sectoral performance was, however, it's sort of mixed. We saw consumer goods, insurance, and oil and gas in the green yesterday, except for the banking and industrial goods index, which closed in the red. Now, Access Core was the most traded stock. If you look at the top trades yesterday, Access Core had like a very, the numbers is quite, out of the usual. 1.23 billion for Access Core. We're probably going to be, digging deep as to what's happening there, because investors are selling off that stock despite the fact that they declared, good. A good dividend, 1 naira 30 kobo dividend for investors was much more than expected, but still sell-offs are, going on in that stock. We saw Transcorp still following 873.59 million units traded yesterday, still on the top trades. Japan Gold following closely, 45.39 million units traded. We saw Honeyflower and Cadbury topping the gainers list yesterday. And all that. Let's look at the NASD market yesterday. Now, marginally down 0.03%, settling at 727.9 points. Still at the 1 trillion naira mark. We'll see how that goes. Today's trading session volume, 2.83 million units, 7.6 million naira. And we saw 7 deals, all transacted in 7 deals yesterday. We were looking at how investors are going to trade in today's trading session. More cautious trading. We look at the money flow index yesterday. It was quite average, significant. Buy interest was much more than the sell-offs. And we're going to see how investors play the last trading day, which is today. We're going to be seeing that number play out in I hope investors are going to put their money and not take it out.
Well, as Ifeoma said, it's the last days of this administration. A lot of investors have the air of uncertainty,
Caution.
Especially, because, also you do have those cases, concerning the election and all of that. So all of that just clouds the investment space, and investors are being very cautious.
And investors, a trader I spoke with was talking about people being bullish on this incoming administration, and they're seeing some sentiments in terms of the trends. People are like, maybe in the policies that they think they're going to set out and they're going to roll out. I think investors are beginning to say in the equities market, however, I'm not talking about the fixed income space, because that is somewhat, yields are trending downwards.
Yeah, but for the president-elect himself, a lot of analysts have said he is pro-market.
Yes.
But I guess what is giving investors uncertainty is the whole situation in the country.
Definitely.
For instance, people were ready for the subsidy removal, or at least we've been talking about it for a while, and then we wake up to a change. Such changes.
Abrupt changes.
Yeah, bring uncertainty into the investment
markets,
space
yes.
and affect investor sentiment. But thank you so much, Will. We'll see you at 1:30 for Business Incorporated. Let's head over to London now, where Juliana is standing by. Juliana, good morning. Well, still some good news coming from there. I think a lot of people were surprised to see NatWest Group recording 50% surge in their profit in spite of all, in spite of it, in the face of everything. I just wonder how they did it.
Well, I think one of the reasons why, good morning, by the way, Innie, they've done it is because of banks' profitability at the moment. Profitability is high because interest rates are so high, 4.2%. They've been rising swiftly. But I'm sorry, I've got to shift away from NatWest to report some breaking news, which has just developed in the past hour, and that is that the BBC chairman, Richard Sharp, has resigned. Why is this a big news? Of course, it's a huge story because, like it or loathe it, the BBC is the world's biggest news network, seen by over 100 million people every day with the BBC World Service. Now, this is a developing story that's just broken, but it is significant because, unfortunately, Richard Sharp's demise is all down to the former British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who appointed Richard Sharp as the BBC chairman in, I believe, January 2021. And the Sunday Times at the beginning of this year reported a pretty scandalous story that suggested that when Boris Johnson, being Prime Minister, was going through some difficult financial issues, it was his friend Richard Sharp who facilitated an £800,000 loan by a wealthy banker. And this has now come back to haunt him. The suggestion was that, of course, one of the reasons why Richard Sharp got the position is because he got Boris Johnson nearly £1 million. Now, this is going to have significant ramifications because anybody who's watching from the UK will know that the BBC is not short of being out of the headlines. They had that scandal with Gary Lineker where he was forced to remove a tweet. There have been issues about whether or not Martin Bashir illegally got Princess Diana, the late Princess Diana, to speak about her former husband, who will be King Charles III. So there are a lot of issues around the BBC, and I think the BBC board are not happy that Richard Sharp has had to resign because he was one of the only final Conservative donors who actually supported funding the BBC. So, yes, sorry to disturb the NatWest news, but this is a major story for Britain and across the world because, as I just said, the BBC is the most watched broadcaster, and its chairman, Richard Sharp, former Goldman Sachs banker, and Tory donors had to resign because of facilitating an £800,000 loan to Boris Johnson. So the Boris Johnson scandal is still ongoing, and it's seen the demise of the BBC chairman.
Yeah, seems like that scandal is a living one and keeps having subsidiaries and children every now and again, Juliana. But anyways, thank you for that. That was a worthy story. So thanks a lot. We do appreciate that. Well, we do know that in the coming days we will have updates from that and a whole lot more. Yeah. Definitely. Thanks a lot and enjoy the rest of your day, Juliana.
Thank you, Annie.
All right, BBC in the news medium in the news will happen once in a while. But let's move over to the crypto space now, where Ladi comes in.
Yep. Thank God it's Friday.
Ladi walks in greedy.
Greedy. I'm a greedy man today. The market keeps being greedy.
Yeah.
Try to fall out of that range, but it's way back in now. So maybe we should be looking out for extreme greed. And you know how you can use these indicators where you see extreme greed? That should be a time for you to evaluate your positions. Should I still stay in this
I will not be happy until Bitcoin gets back to $60,000.
$60,000. I'm sure a lot of people will be happy, and I'm not happy yet. But
I'm not moved by the greed index. It's 60. Let's see the price of Bitcoin.
Bitcoin has moved about almost 90% in the first quarter.
Yeah, but
I'm sure you're still not satisfied.
I'm not.
All right, now let's look at the market now. We see it's greed 64 points. So we have today showing that traders are still quite bullish right now. Let's look at the top markets we follow in this market. There, $29,507. That's what Bitcoin That's trading out today 1.31% up. And we see Ethereum 1,915 points, still away from that $2,000 psychological level. Binance token 326, 2.35% down. That's the only down that we have on board today. XRP, that's up 2.98%, trying to get back above that 50-cent level. Let's bring in Rume Ofi now, financial market analyst. Hello, Rume.
Good morning, Laddie. Good morning.
Good morning, Rume. Quite an interesting week. Most traders thought, Bitcoin was starting some kind of downward trend, but it looks like it's still quite bullish at this point, getting to that 26K level, but shooting back up to 29,000.
Yes, a lot of people are actually not facing the reality. You can see what is happening in the global economy, even though tech stocks are actually seeing some gains these days. Yesterday, most especially, and a few things. Some people are feeling that, oh, there's no, the fear on recession has actually dropped. But the truth is that, like I said previously, this is more like relief before the storm. What happened previously, I think within the week, 2 days back, when Bitcoin dumped to about 26K, was a rumor from one account, DB, on Twitter. There's this platform called Mangos that has the hackers actually got into and stole about huge amount, about 850,000 Bitcoin from the platform Mangos. Mangos and the United States government actually moving some cryptocurrencies. That actually cost about 320 million liquidation from longs and short. So in this whole incidents that happened, the whole market was scared, and a lot of persons actually lost their money. What I would say in all of this is people should be very careful. And fundamental analysis is also very important. You have to read the news and also put stop loss. If you are an active trader, we're going to see some level of volatility. All is not well for the crypto market, except certain persons don't want to tell you the truth. You must have seen YouTubers saying we're going to the moon, to the moon, to the moon. All is not well. The crypto market cannot work in isolation. You can see that news alone sent the market down. So you can imagine when the actual thing happened, we'll see some level of downside. I'm not trying to become a prophet of doom here, but we need to take risk management very serious. We have a lot of people in this industry that are just doing certain things at their own volition, and it is not good for them losing their money. Peradventure, some others trying to come to the space, they need to understand that this space is a space where you have to take your money or risk management really serious.
Talk about risk management in a risky market, Rumi, but what are we expecting for the weekend? When it's a 24-hour market, 24 hours, 7 days, and for next week too, what are you expecting for the market?
Next week we'll be having the Fed. I think Wednesday coming up. With me personally, I think the Fed is going to hike interest rates, which is also going to shake the market, and also the ECB are also going to shake the market. You see that the U.S. GDP came up yesterday, showing that the U.S. economy is slowing, which means that is going to affect every other sector. And I like to be very practical here. People need to understand that when it comes to that stage where people, when people are losing jobs, the idea of getting Bitcoin becomes something really secondary. They need to care for the basic things of life, like shelter, food, and clothing. So that is greatly going to affect the price of Bitcoin. I'm going to see some downside. Like I said, it's always been said that I'm becoming a bearish guy here, but the truth has to be said at this point in time.
All right, Rume the Bear. Thank you so much, Rume. Hopefully you turn into a bull sometime. Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic.
All right, so Eddie, that's how it's looking. It's a Friday.
Did I just hear you call your guest the bear?
Yeah, Rume, he calls himself the bear also. Even though everyone's all excited, he's always coming with that voice of reason that, you know what, be very careful in this market.
Yeah, don't get excited and caught up in all of the... Yeah. All right, thank you so much, Laddie. I guess we'll see you tomorrow, Capital Markets. All right, thank you. So thank you so much for being a part of Business Morning all through the week. We still have a whole lot of unanswered questions, especially concerning that a subsidy regime, which the federal government just changed its stance. So We'll stay on that on Monday. Promise you to get some of those answers, the questions answered. But tomorrow, Ladi Williams will be here, Capital Market. Meanwhile, today, 1:30, Will Ibon will give you an update from the world of business. I'm John Mekwa, wishing you a great weekend. Have some rest. We'll make money on Monday again.